Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Animas Corporation, providing insulin delivery products for people living with diabetes and part of the Johnson & Johnson Diabetes Care Companies. And by Dexcom. Take control of your diabetes with the world's first continuous glucose monitoring system that sends glucose readings directly to your compatible smart device. Live life on your own terms with Dexcom. Hi, it's Stacey. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
This week, during Diabetes Awareness Month, November, you may find yourself trying to explain what diabetes is. But my guests this week are trying to explain more about how diabetes feels. They've created a unique set of cards. It's all about empathy.
When we have engaged the sense of, I know what diabetes is, that can be helpful for protocol, right? I know what to do. But when we engaged, I feel what you feel, I feel both what the parent feels and what the person with diabetes feels. All of a sudden now there's this gut compulsion to make life better because now my problem is your problem, right?
Justin Masterson explains the Walk a Mile cards and project along with Kerri Sparling and Bennet Dunlap, 3 of the 5 people who worked on this project. Plus, you never know who you'll run into at a JDRF walk in LA. A couple of TV types with Type 1 helped kick things off. This is Derek Theler from ABC Family's Baby Daddy.
You can live your life however you want. You can achieve all of your goals. You shouldn't let diabetes hold you back. So I'm so happy to meet fans, take photos, and talk to them about my experience so that they can, have that to relate to.
I also spoke to Brec Bassinger of Bella and the Bulldogs and to KTLA News Anchor Frank Buckley. Plus, a little bit more about what's going on for this National Diabetes Awareness Month. It all starts now on Diabetes Connections. Welcome to another week. As I've been saying, it's Diabetes Awareness Month, but we're not really doing anything too different here. Every month, every show is Diabetes Awareness time here on Diabetes Connections. I'm Stacey Sims, and I am thrilled to have you along for another week. If you're brand new to the show, this is your first episode, I am so glad you found us. What we try to do here is inform, educate, entertain, inspire about type 1 diabetes with information, talking to tech companies, newsmakers, ordinary people living with type 1, and today a couple of people on TV who have type 1. My son was diagnosed right before he turned 2. He is about to turn 12, so yep, we're coming up on 10 years. I do not have diabetes myself. My perspective is that of a parent and of a spouse of someone with type 2 diabetes. My husband has type 2. So I'm glad to have you along. If you're new to the show and you are not yet listening on your phone, that's really the best way to go ahead and do it. If you've got an iPhone, go ahead and get the podcast app. You can take the show and any podcast with you wherever you go. If you have an Android, I would highly recommend Stitcher or Google Play Music, but we're on every single podcast app you can find. And if you prefer listening through Facebook or on your computer, whatever works for you. There's so much going on for Diabetes Awareness Month, and I'm taking part in a few things that I just wanted to bring to your attention. Just this past week, as this airs, just yesterday actually, it would have been on Monday, I took part in the Facebook group Diapers and Diabetes. And as I mentioned, my son was diagnosed right before he turned 2. He was 23 months. He was like 22 months when we noticed something weird was going on. And Facebook wasn't around back then. That was 2006. Maybe it was around for college students, but we certainly weren't on it. But now there are all these groups, and Diapers and Diabetes is for the littlest with type 1, for their parents, really, of course. So I was excited to do that. I posted and talked about a blog post that I wrote a long time ago called Doing Diabetes Through the Crib Slats. And I will link that up at diabetes-connections.com. Diabetes Mine, now part of Healthline, published that way back when. And I'll tell you what, I if you know me, you know I joke around about stuff a lot, but diabetes with a toddler is a special sort of crazy. And we didn't know anything else. I didn't know anybody else in my family. I certainly hadn't taken care of anybody with type 1. But I do remember vividly that moment where it was our first night home. and I had to do a correction in the middle of the night, and I was trying to decide how to do it in the crib. You don't ever want to wake a sleeping baby, right? So you can read that post. But that was a lot of fun to help out in that way, and I'm really thrilled that they asked me to do that. I'm also taking part in the World Diabetes Day Twitter chat, and that is on World Diabetes Day, which is on November 14th. People around the world, really, are going to take part in this, are moderating an hour each. This is organized, as it has been for the past couple of years, by Kerri Sparling, who is the amazing woman behind Diabetes Social Media Advocacy, the hashtag DSMA, a Twitter chat that I like to take part in whenever I can. It's on Wednesdays at 9 Eastern time. And she has organized a World Diabetes Day chat that just gets bigger and bigger. And I think it's the full 24 hours this year. So I'm at 6 p.m. That's my slot, 6 p.m. Eastern. And I'm going to be talking about media. And I'm also going to be asking people to tag their local broadcasters. So if you are not on Twitter yet, get on before the 14th. It's going to be a great day. You can also just read the Twitter chat, and I will link that up at diabetes-connections.com. So if you don't want to sign on to Twitter, but you want to see what everybody's talking about, it's really not that hard to do. Then on December 6th, I'm going to be taking part in another Twitter chat, this one hosted by the people at Diabetic Connect, which is a website with lots of resources, big community for people with diabetes, and their Twitter chat is DCDE. That's the hashtag. They do that every Tuesday and at 9 o'clock Eastern. So I'm really excited to be participating in that, and I'll have more information as we get a little closer to that date. And actually, right before that, on December 3rd, I will be in Naples. I'm going to be in Naples, Florida with the folks at Animas at a JDRF walk. So that should be a lot of fun. And if you live near Naples, I hope you come out and say hi. Okay, speaking of Animas, choosing an insulin pump is an important decision. I feel very fortunate that our certified diabetes educator really worked with us to educate us about all of our options, listen to what we wanted in an insulin pump. And after 9 years with Animas, I know it was the right decision. Benny was 2 when we started with an Animas pump. It is more than 9 years since we started with the pump, and we continue to be impressed with everything, including the stellar customer service. That's why I'm so glad to be able to tell you about our experience, and why I would really urge you learn more about Animas insulin pumps. Just go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Animas logo. I have a habit of bringing lousy weather with me sometimes. I know I talk about some of the events I'm going to. Be careful when you book me because chances are good, especially if you're on the West Coast and you don't get a lot of rain, Southern California, that I will bring it. Years ago, my husband and I went to Palm Springs, the desert. Rained for 2 days straight when we were there. I mean, they don't get 2 days straight rain in years in Palm Springs. So it rained. And so we got in the car and said, we're just going to go to Vegas. Forget this. We'll go. It snowed. Oh my gosh. So I went to LA right at the end of October. And yeah, it rained. It was actually closer to Pasadena. I flew into LAX, but the walk was in Pasadena. And I went out there and it was like 60 degrees. It was kind of drizzly and everybody was freezing and bundled up. But it was a lot of fun. And the rain held off until just after the walk, so that was lucky. But yeah, I don't know what that is about me. I'd like to think I'm a ray of sunshine, but apparently I can bring the rain clouds. So in LA, it was a lot of fun. Animas brought me out. I met so many wonderful people. That's a big walk. That's at the Rose Bowl. And it was fantastic to be able to meet a few of you who've listened to the podcast, make some new friends. And I was even I had some time to spend with my friend Michelle, who is an integral part and one of the creators of Project Blue November. They were started a couple of years back because, remembering, of course, the Ice Bucket Challenge, and people kept saying, well, what are people with diabetes doing? We don't have something. And a group of women, mostly diabetes moms, some who have type 1 themselves, said, we do have all these great resources, but there's just no clearinghouse for them. There's no place that kind of runs everything through it. So they started Project Blue November to get the word out about other organizations, and they've also taken on in their own right some great stuff. They do very funny memes. They have a teen panel that if you have a teen or close to it, you need to read the responses. These are real kids who have type 1, and they talk about what it's really like. They answer specific questions, and the teen topics are fantastic. So I love Project Blue November. Really fun to see Michelle. Of course, she's out in California. We don't get to talk too much. And I will link up a lot more at diabetes-connections.com. They also sell cool T-shirts for diabetes research. And they say like on Fridays we wear blue, that kind of stuff. They're really good people. So that was great. The walk was terrific. And the LA walk is kind of different than some of the other walks because, it's LA. And not only is it huge, but some of the people who go happen to work in the TV and movie industry. So I was really excited because I got to meet Frank Buckley. Now, he would laugh if I called him a TV or movie star. Frank is with KTLA. He's the morning anchor of that station out there. He also has a podcast as well, but his son was diagnosed with type 1 a few years back. You'll hear my interview with Frank. I met Derek Theler, who is a very much up-and-coming actor, if not really a TV star already. He's on ABC Family's Baby Daddy. Actually, I think ABC Family is now Freeform, but the show's been going on for a while now, and Derek has made a movie. Derek has type 1. He was diagnosed when he was a little kid. And Brec Bassinger, who has type 1 diabetes, and Brec is in Bella and the Bulldogs, which is a Nickelodeon show that we watch as a family. It's a couple of years old, and we absolutely love it. And Benny really likes it. And she made a video for Benny, which was just so cool. So I'll post that on the Facebook page. What a nice person. I got to meet her family as well. When you listen to this very short interview with Brec, and I do hope to have her back on again in the future, realize that she's just cut the ribbon on the walk. As you can imagine, everybody wants to meet her. So it was really hard to get close to her before the walk started. And I jumped in and just walked with her and her friends and caught up with them. So you kind of hear that pace as we go ahead and talk.
Wow, so that was so much fun. You guys were great. It must be crazy for you today, though.
Oh my gosh, it's very insane. It's a bit overwhelming, but it's so much fun.
Who are you here with today?
I'm here with my best friends. This girl actually plays young Bella from Bella.
Oh, hey, what's up? How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good. Is it fun to be here today?
I'm so happy to be supporting Brec in such a great cause.
Awesome. Well, thanks for doing that. This is a cause that's near and dear to me because my son has type 1.
Okay, how long has he had
It'll be 10 years in December. He was diagnosed right before he turned
10 years
12.
in January. Oh no, I'm 9 years in January. That's a lie. I'm so excited for 10 years just because I feel like that's such a big number.
Yeah.
That I just keep saying it's 10 years when it's definitely not.
Well,
Okay.
we'll have you as our 10-year bestie, too. That's all right.
Okay.
You can jump on the train
Sounds
with us.
good.
What does it mean for something like this? Because everybody was excited to meet you and see your support today. But as a person living with diabetes, this is so personal to you.
It is.
I mean, what went through your mind when you were up there on the stage?
For me, it's like the most comforting feeling in the world to be here and being like surrounded by so many people that truly understand what you go through and like their families. So there's the families like understanding each other because they know the struggles. But also it gives me a lot of hope just because like so many people here are supporting and donating, and I truly, truly believe there will be a cure soon.
I do too.
And I'm so excited about it. I can feel it. We're on the brink of it.
And so this is a silly question, but you're all wearing Boo Diabetes shirts, which I get. It's Halloween.
Yes.
Did you do anything for Halloween this year?
I'm going to a Halloween party actually after this, and then I'll go trick-or-treating tomorrow because I'm forever 5.
That's great. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So that was fun. I'll have Brec back on, I hope, in a longer format sometime soon. And that young woman who said she plays young Bella on the show, her name is Joelle Better, and she was so nice, and she was so happy to support the team there. And it was really fun. As I mentioned, I caught up with Brec during the walk. I mean, the walk had started, and I just walked along with them. I was lucky enough to have a few minutes with Derek Theler right before the walk began. Derek was wearing a Dexcom shirt, and it was fun. You'll hear in the interview he's talking about Dexcom as well, but it was fun to connect. He just recently started wearing it. And 3 years ago, when my son Benny turned 9, we started using the Dexcom continuous glucose monitoring system. And the Dexcom CGM changed the way we look at his type 1 diabetes. Being able to continually see and track his glucose levels on a screen has been an amazing experience. I cannot tell you how much easier that makes my job as a parent to spot trends and help my son avoid extreme highs and lows. The Dexcom G5 mobile CGM system is the first of its kind to help you monitor, track, and share glucose continuously and remotely from your compatible smart device, so you can live life on your own terms. For more information, go to Dexcom.com. I've been able to meet Derek Theler before the walk started. He was doing an interview for one of the TV stations, and I was able to talk to his manager. So he and I talked for a few minutes without the tape rolling, and I need to mention he was diagnosed at age 3, and his sister was also diagnosed at age 3. She's 2 years younger than he is. So he grew up knowing someone with type 1, but that was really the only person that he knew, and he certainly didn't know anybody, he says, who was on TV, which has really motivated him, and you'll hear that in the interview. You guys grew up together with type 1. Do you remember? I mean, that's just your childhood, but to many of us, that seems like an unusual way and a good way to grow up knowing somebody else.
Yeah, that's true. We definitely went through highs and lows together. It's funny, but so part of my message working in television now is I really want to build a community. I want to be somebody that children with type 1 and parents can relate to, because I feel like I didn't have that growing up, who was somebody who was working in television, and that's kind of what I want to use with whatever platform I have, is bring awareness to it.
Were you concerned as an actor that people, if they knew there might be issues for you on the set or otherwise?
You know what? I don't bring it out until I book the job. It's like as I was, starting my career and getting more jobs, I found that everyone was very, very accepting to the disease, and it was, at this point, it's something that I'm very proud of, and I think that there's only a couple of type 1 diabetics who really are, A-listers or in the limelight, and they don't really put it out there or try to build awareness or a community, and that's what I want to do.
Well, it's true too. Even people, we don't walk around with any health conditions saying this is me. You
Yeah.
don't go to an audition or a job interview
True.
saying, hi, I'm
Yeah.
the person with type 1.
Right.
But have you had any incidents on set where you thought, ugh, I can't eat what they're bringing, or I have to make some modifications, or I have a low right now?
Yeah, I mean, no matter who you are with type 1 diabetes, you can't always have it right. And I've had several lows on set before, and my cast and crew kind of understands it now, especially for the show I work on. We're going into our 6th season. We're going to hit 100 episodes. They know what I look like when I'm going down. So it's like, hey, we need 5. We need to get Derek a Coke, So that's kind of our dynamic, which is great. But I shot a movie in South Africa, and I was actually in the water for 5 days straight, and I'm used to using an insulin pump, and I had to teach myself how to use insulin injections for that whole time because I couldn't use the pump on the water. So that was an interesting time for me too, relating to working in films and stuff. It was hard. It was something that I had to retrain myself to do after I had used the pump for almost 10 years.
Kind of switch to the water.
Yeah, that's the next thing, right?
Does your sister now give you a hard time about your jobs and your work?
Of course, my whole family does. I mean, I grew up, my parents were in the military. I grew up like very humbly, modest livings, and no one had any idea what this business was like from my family. So it's they definitely try to keep me grounded and make fun of me all the time. Yeah.
And it was great to see you. I walked up with a Dexcom shirt. So do you use the Dexcom?
Yeah, I actually do. My sister, who I mentioned is type 1 as well, got pregnant about 2 years ago, and she went on the Dexcom system to make sure her levels were stable and as in control as possible, because it's so important when she has a child, And she turned me on to it, and ever since I got it, it's like a game changer. It's an unbelievable device. I truly believe in it. I used it for a year before I partnered with them, and I'm really happy to be here working with them now.
That's great. That's great. What do you set your alarms on, if I could be so bold? Do you ever use the baby crying, or do you ever use the crazy alerts? I don't either.
No, because they're scary. All of them. We should probably with Dexcom, we need to get some more like modest alerts going on.
I want one, and I want this with my son's pump. I want the personalized, so you could do your TV show theme.
Yeah, that's
or I
cool.
could be like, a police song. I don't know, something that's music. My son wants like the Jaws theme.
Yeah, that's cool. Something like that would be great. But it's really a unique and amazing device, and it's a game changer. I think I went from insulin injections to the pump. That was a huge moment, and now to the CGM.
So you were just on stage, rooting everybody on. When you are at something like this, and people, I heard someone say, hey, can I get your autograph? I think she says, will you sign my face? You know, when you're at something like this, you want to form a community. You want to help people with type 1 and kids especially. What goes through your head when you're on stage?
I'm excited. I'm excited to see how many people are here. And it's kind of one of those things when you're an actor, usually you kind of want your privacy. But in a situation like this, I want everyone to understand that you can live your life however you want. You can achieve all of your goals. You shouldn't let diabetes hold you back. So I'm so happy to meet fans, take photos, and talk to them about my experience so that they can, have that to relate to.
And one more quick question. I'm curious, you said you had the connection of your sister growing up, but do you remember the first person you met, either in the industry or elsewhere? Like, who was your connection in the diabetes community, or somebody that first made a difference for you?
That's a really, really good question, because I don't remember knowing any type 1 diabetics. I went to diabetes camp. So I got to, we went to a summer camp for 2 weeks or something, and I got to meet all of my people, and it was such a good time. We had a nurse with every cabin, and everyone could relate to the same type of problems. But I don't remember someone being like in the industry or working in television or anything like that I could say, oh, if they did it, I can do it. So that's kind of my goal, is to try to be something like that with whatever fan base I can accumulate.
That's fabulous. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I'm really glad the sound came out, because Derek Theler is very tall. I think he's 6'5", and it was me. I am 5'5" in shoes, so it was me, the shorty, holding up my recorder. He was so nice, and I hope to interview him again in the future. That was a lot of fun. And then Frank Buckley. As I said, Frank's son was diagnosed a few years ago as a young teenager. Frank is a news anchor with KTLA. He is a great guy and has been a big help for JDRF and diabetes causes over the years. And I caught him right before, you'll hear this, right before he had to go on stage.
Your son has had type 1 for a long time. Tell me about him.
Yeah, so my son Ben was diagnosed at the age of 12. And he's 19 now. He's doing great. He's in university and thriving and wonderful. But he was diagnosed at 12, just at an annual physical. They took the blood and urine, as they always do, and they called us that night, and they said, we're so sorry, but your son has type 1 diabetes. And I think, like many people who are diagnosed, we didn't even know the difference between type 1 and type 2, and thought this has to be a mistake, because our perception of diabetes was that it was, it afflicted people who were overweight or out of shape or that had a bad diet. And that didn't apply to our son at all. He played year-round basketball. He was incredibly fit. He was healthy as a 12-year-old can be in terms of diet. And so we thought this must be a mistake. And of course, we immediately went the next day to get checked again, and sure enough, it confirmed that he did have type 1 diabetes. So that began our journey. It was devastating at first. I remember being in the hospital with my wife and talking to our doctor about what it meant to have type 1 and the daily routine involved. And my wife, who's a very strong person and very organized, and obviously we love our son dearly, she almost fainted in the hospital, just overwhelmed by what was to come. And I think it's not an uncommon reaction from people who suddenly find out that, what the doctor told them, that your son or daughter has 10 fingers and 10 toes and everything's in the right place, and you live this charmed life, and then suddenly the diagnosis comes, and you think, well, how can this be? I have a healthy child. And he's still healthy, but he just has to manage it more actively.
So you go from fainting to, I'm sure, taking charge of things.
Yeah.
Was the transition difficult? Because my son is about to turn 12, and it is a difficult age. He's a great kid, but it's not like telling a small child, here's how mommy and daddy are going to handle this.
Right.
They have to do a lot themselves.
Yeah, he took it upon himself immediately, and we've always been, we've always tried to say to him, look, you have this through no fault of your own, and there's nothing to be ashamed of or embarrassed about. So when you need to check your blood sugars, you do it in the open. when you have to inject, obviously we started with syringes. Obviously people get nervous seeing a syringe, so, maybe turn away, but that's nothing to be ashamed about. It's just you don't want to, have someone else faint. And then, with his pump, he wears it proudly out and about. Now he's on a CGM. And it's, he took charge of it immediately. Now, we were fortunate that we were at a school that was close to our home. My wife was able to go every day at lunchtime initially to help him for the first few months so he could do it, with the assistance of a parent. And also we had a school nurse who was very helpful. We could store our insulin in her refrigerator. And so we had a great support system. And and so here we are 7 years later, and he's doing fine.
What do you think about at these kinds of walks? I mean, I've been an MC at these kinds of events. It's fun, it's exciting, there's a lot of energy, but you also had to give up your day to get up early, as you do during the week, to come and do this. What goes through your head when you look out at the crowd?
Well, I hope that people here have the sense that I had when I first came to a walk, that, it was so empowering, because when you're first diagnosed, you feel alone, and you feel like you're in this struggle by yourself. And you come to a walk like this where we'll have at least 10,000 people today, you think, wow, A, there's a lot of people going on this journey with me, and B, a lot of people here to support. So they're calling me to the stage, so it's good to talk to you.
Great to talk with you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So that was some good timing. We made it just in time. And I'll put some pictures and from the walk and some other information at diabetes-connections.com. Really fun trip to Los Angeles and to the Rose Bowl. I'd never been to Rose Bowl Stadium. What a cool place for the walk. Thank you so much, Animus, for letting me work with you out there. It was so much fun to talk to families. And really, I hope I can do something like that again soon.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
My next guests are trying to do something different. As I said at the very beginning of the show, Diabetes Awareness Month is often about trying to spread information, awareness, trying to tell people what diabetes is, what type 1 is, what type 2 is, what do we go through, that sort of thing. But this is about teaching people what diabetes feels like as much as we can. This is about empathy. They call it empathy exercises. And I was really excited to find out more about it. I'm talking about something called Walk a Mile cards. This is a pack of cards. As I'm recording this, I'm holding it in my hands. It's a deck of cards. You kind of shuffle it up, and you'll hear more about what's on the cards during the interview. But it's basically a game or just something to use to get people thinking. A little bit to set up before we get to the interview here. You're going to be hearing from the people who created the project. Justin Masterson is a dad of a little girl with type 1. Bennet Dunlap is a longtime diabetes advocate. He writes under the blog Your Diabetes May Vary, and he also co-founded and runs DPAC, Diabetes Patient Advocacy Coalition, along with Christelle Prigliano. So we're talking to Justin and Bennet and Kerri Sparling, who is a longtime, well-known blogger and advocate. There are 2 other people involved in the project who were not a part of the interview just because of scheduling and because 5 people on a podcast is a little crazy. But Marissa Town and Amy Omer, I really need to mention them as well because it's really the 5 of them that put this all together. I also need to set up, and I'm sorry, they went off on a bunch of different tangents. I just don't want anybody to be confused. I need to set up that Kerri had a baby recently. So, and we do talk about the baby, but it's probably about a month ago. So he's probably a little bit bigger now. I also need to explain that Kerri's husband is a screenwriter. So Bennet brings up some of the stuff he's doing, but I'm not sure it's clear that he actually is a very well-known and successful screenwriter. So there is a reason why he's talking about creepy stuff with Kerri's husband. And I also need to tell you that Spare a Rose is a charity that you'll hear a lot more about as we get closer to February. Okay, thoroughly confused? Yeah, I definitely got myself confused. So let's talk about the Walk a Mile Type 1 Diabetes edition with Justin, Kerri, and Bennet. Kerri, Justin, and Bennet, thank you all so much for joining me today. These cards are terrific. I can't wait to talk about this. Thanks for spending some time.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
All right, Justin, let me start with you because you are the one who actually gave me the decks of cards when I saw you this summer. What is this all about? What's the story behind Walk a Mile? How did this come about?
So Kerri and Bennet and I met through actually some type 1 diabetes innovation work that was happening as part of a network of centers that were going to get together and bring together all of these experts, whether they are endocrinologists or they are systems designers or they are parents of people with diabetes or persons with diabetes themselves. And we were part of a small team of parents and of people with diabetes and people with diabetes themselves who were trying to help build empathy into this much larger group. And somebody had the brilliant idea, not me. Maybe, I don't know, Bennet, was that you who said, you know what we should do is try and create a list of empathy exercises for them?
If it was a brilliant idea, it precludes me.
We'll have to assume it was Kerri then.
I think that works.
Yeah, it's a good bet.
I do remember, though, seeing these cards in a different format. Maybe they were larger. Kerri, what was the point of this in the beginning? It was questions, right? You're asking questions of people or trying to imagine themselves in situations.
Well, it was kind of a take on the Cards Against Humanity sort of thing, but we had to sort of change it in order to not, get sued. But because those cards are geared towards generating conversations that are kind of horrible, but we wanted to spin it and make it something that would help people really step into the role of a person with diabetes and see things from the perspective that they hadn't maybe considered before. So instead of doing something for evil discussions against humanity, we tried to do something for good. And that's where this Walk a Mile sort of empathy conversation took place, because we were in a room full of people that were all working to serve the diabetes community and better the diabetes experience, but not everybody was actually living it, and we needed everybody to see it with that lens, through that lens. Was there a moment in that room where people realized that while they wanted to help, they didn't understand? Is that kind of the light bulb moment? Well, I think and you guys please tell me if you think this is wrong, but I feel like everyone was looking at this from a to-do list sort of perspective instead of seeing the emotional output that diabetes generates. They were looking at it as you prick your finger and you take your insulin and you need to sign in and see your doctor and all that sort of stuff. But it was really hard to continue to drive home that concept of, but we feel stuff. Like, it's not a matter of getting your A1C. Is how unnerving can it be to walk through the door to even get that lab drawn in the first place? Like, what are the impediments that keep people with diabetes from being, and I'm using finger quotes, you just can't see, compliant and adherent and that sort of those nonsense words that sound so clinical but are really applicable to the diabetes space, but we needed them to see that there's also emotion tied to every action. And that was kind of what fueled this. Bennet, let me ask you to jump in, because you deal quite a bit with policy, and this is about emotion. Are they all tied together? Was that very important to you to have, because you have children with type 1, you have type 2 yourself. Did you feel like there was a disconnect in the room that day?
Yeah, very much so. And it certainly wasn't in any way, shape, or form out of a lack of goodwill. I mean, these are remarkably talented people who have nothing but the very best of intentions. And yet at the same time, they don't even understand the day-to-day stresses of just living with type 1 diabetes. So, we made up a couple of batch cards, and when I say we, I mean Justin overnight did this tremendous job and made up a couple of dozen of these things, and we started using them in the meeting. And I was really struck when one of the participants who did no living experience with diabetes drew one of the cards. At every break, we'd have somebody draw one and ask him to volunteer to do what the card said. And we were breaking for lunch, and the guy pulled a card, and it said, your blood sugar's high. Pretend to take a dose of insulin. You have to wait an hour before eating your lunch. So this person sat there while everybody else is eating with food right in front of him. Mm-hmm. And an hour later, the timer went off. Someone had a timer on their phone. And we talked to him about how that felt. And it was just cathartic for the whole room to have this person who had, like I said, nothing but the very best of intentions said, I felt like I wasn't part of the process. I wasn't part of the community at my table. I was thinking about this other thing all the time and trying to be engaged. And it was so powerful to see that come from just a little tiny paper card. It was amazing.
Justin, your daughter was diagnosed about 2 years ago, right? Just after she turned 5. Mm-hmm. I guess I was going to ask you a very dumb question as a parent of a child with type 1. My question was, how did you so quickly come up with all of these thoughts and cards? But I guess
that's okay. I have a dumb answer, which is I didn't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So what I was able to bring to the table was just a startling level of ignorance. And what was helpful about that was that I knew that I didn't know anything. And so Bennet and Kerri and Marissa and Amy and all of the other folks who were part of this panel started just describing experiences from their lives that were very real and in many cases very emotional and very difficult. And in some cases, almost from the outside, they looked like laughably pragmatic until you touch on the emotional core of them. And you say, oh my gosh, that's real. So when you talk about the finger prick, you talk about the midday check, or you talk about having to grab that glass of orange juice, that I, as a neophyte to the world of type 1 diabetes, I had no idea that this was an emotionally relevant moment. They brought that to the conversation. And all of a sudden, like, my job was just to turn that into meaningful exercises in the form of these cards.
When I said a dumb question, I meant because there is so much emotion tied up with being a newly diagnosed parent. So that's what I meant. But I didn't realize. So Justin, you helped with the process here, but there were many other people who'd lived the experience for longer, like Bennet and Kerri, coming up with these. And I've read a couple in the introduction, but I want to read one that really spoke to me. Because I use this kind of as an example when I explain to my friends. So this one says, people affected by diabetes must constantly document information about their health. Activity. Tonight, set alarms for midnight, 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. At each time, weigh yourself and write down the result. Kerri, I want to talk to you about this because I've kind of role-played with Benny over the years when he gets questions about, adults will say to him, can you eat that? What's your A1C? He's in a setting where I know, but it'll be at camp where, not a diabetes camp, but there's a nurse or, and they're trying to be helpful. And we've explained over the years that that's like him saying to them, hey, should you be eating that? How much do you weigh? Mm-hmm. And, I like to use that because people are always shocked when they think about someone asking them what they weigh. Have you had that experience?
Have I personally had someone ask me what I
No. Have you had someone ask you? Have you had someone ask you, like, should you eat that? What's your A1C?
Oh, of course. I mean, I've got 30 years of type 1 under my belt, so I've been asked every question in the book, I think, including recently when I had my son. One of my aunts asked me if my diabetes would go away because, after you have a baby, diabetes goes away, right? I'm like, oh my goodness, you guys, this has been 30 years. But anyway, people, they ask questions that are almost always well-intentioned, but usually reasonably misinformed. And that's because the minutia of diabetes is not what's often highlighted. People talk about diabetes and they talk about A1Cs and diet and exercise, whether you're talking about type 1 or type 2. And that's what people really that's what they can wrap their heads around. So when they're looking at a plate of food in front of you, they don't see the mental math that you're doing in that moment and how you're doing it every single time you sit down to eat. They're looking at this overarching, but you have an A1C. I know that. What is it? As though that plays into eating your eggs and toast for breakfast kind of thing.
Right. It's interesting to think about. We've only been in this world for 10 years, but it seems that in the last few years, much more attention has been given to the emotional side of it. And while I know people have been working and professionals have been helping for years and years about that, do you feel, Kerri, that it's somehow coming more to the fore? It's easier to talk about the emotional side of diabetes in the last few years?
Yeah, and you know what? I'm going to go right in and credit the diabetes online community for helping generate a lot of that conversation because people are sharing their personal diabetes stories on a day-to-day basis. And it's not a matter of what was your fasting blood sugar and then everybody goes and likes that post on Facebook or shares it with their friends. It's not that. It's how do these things make you feel? That's the stuff that resonates for the community. It's not the individual numbers. It's the way it maps in our real and actual lives in the context of real life sort of stuff. And so I think that when people are sharing their stories and you see diabetes in the thread, in the flow of somebody's, day-to-day stuff that isn't all diabetes related, what's it like at soccer practice? What's it like taking care of your kids? What's it like going to school? When you see it in context like that, it makes it easier to talk about. And it makes it easier to kind of see the full person, the whole person. And people with diabetes who are writing about this stuff online and sharing it at conferences and on podcasts and the whole bit, like it helps build out what diabetes really looks like to people who might not otherwise understand. I think society is getting a broader view of a real person with diabetes and their perspectives by peeking in through the windows of social media.
Yeah, I think that's really true. And then the next step of that is that as we have emotional health professionals, psychologists, psychiatrists, whatever all those different titles are, come and work with our community, it's an opportunity for us to sort of feature their work and say, hey, look, there is some actual science here, and make that a relevant part of care. And if that ultimately is part of what comes out of this process, that's just a tremendously huge win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, building in the mental health component of life with chronic illness, particularly diabetes, is a pretty strong link and a really, really powerful component to really get your head around.
It really
right, and the first step of that is to talk about it. So that's what I was trying to say in 1,000 words that didn't make any sense a minute ago.
We got it. It's all good. Bennet, when you talk about that kind of thing, I always kind of circle back to policy with you because of DPAC. Is there a way to kind of think that these cards and this effort and what Kerri talked about in terms of sharing more on social media can affect future policy?
So I think that the most important thing to do in policy is to make ourselves become real human beings and ask our politicians to see us as human beings. So the first thing we try to teach people to do after we've sort of taught them the mechanics of, yes, you can be involved in policy, is to tell your story. And we challenge people to write their story with diabetes in a few sentences. And that personalizes you and your issues to your policymaker. I can tell you that I've had these cards in my pocket when I've talked to policymakers. I have been in informal situations where I've kind of pulled one out, and I keep them as, I carry a stacked deck, so I know which card I'm going to pull when I go in there, and I'll go out and I'll pull it out, and I just sort of go, and here's, a case in point. And I've done that. I haven't done it to elected officials, but that's only because I haven't seen an elected official in a little while.
Justin, circling back to you and your daughter, you're not diagnosed too long ago.
Yeah.
How has this made a difference for you? Are you able to talk to relatives and friends using these tools in a different way, perhaps, than you would have otherwise?
Yeah, that part's been a huge help. So, I don't get to meet with policymakers often, but I get to meet with people who are impacting our lives every day. And so my daughter goes to a small private Catholic school, and they hadn't had any experience with type 1 diabetes. So to be able to walk in and say, I'm not just going to describe how diabetes works mechanically, I'm going to give you a sense of what it feels like, a sense of what it's like both as a parent and as a person with diabetes through these cards, helped the folks at the school, from the administrators down to the teachers and the school nurse, to know that, look, I'm not just interacting with a series of steps. I'm interacting with a human being who has a rich emotional life connected with this part of her. And that has been invaluable. And the reality is that empathy isn't just a feeling. Empathy is an advanced problem-solving tool. And so when people start to experience what you experience, they're naturally, because now it's their problem, they're naturally going to start working to fix it. And I've seen that with teachers, with relatives, with friends who have engaged in empathy and started problem solving with us.
Is that my bell, or is that somebody's?
No, that was me. I'm sorry.
Is your order up? You all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Justin, to continue that, when you talk about empathy as problem solving, I've not heard that. I mean, is it really just, to me, empathy just means I kind of understand you some more, but then you take it to the next step. Have you seen that with your daughter's caregivers at the school?
Yes. Yeah. So when we have engaged the sense of, I know what diabetes is, that can be helpful for protocol, right? I know what to do. But when we engaged, I feel what you feel, I feel both what the parent feels and what the person with diabetes feels. All of a sudden now there's this gut compulsion to make life better, because now my problem is your problem, right? And so they start solving problems autonomously and throwing suggestions out and trying to fix things because now they feel the need. It's not just check the box. It's like, I can feel it in my gut, and I want that to be better. And so I get phone calls and texts from the school and from relatives and friends that say, hey, I had this thought. What if we did this? Would this be helpful? That are totally unprompted, but it's because they now have this gut compulsion to solve, which is so cool.
And just for the adult with type 1 perspective, because Justin, you have a young child, Bennet, you have older kids, and Kerri, you are the person with diabetes.
I'm a grown-up.
You're a grown-up with babies of your own, and we got to get an update too, because I know people are listening and thinking, when are you going to ask her about the baby? But I'm just curious, because as a parent, I think it seems like it would be easier to talk about type 1, because other parents are interested in how's your kid doing, and when they're little, it's all about milestones. And then when I see friends, how are your kids? We all talk about it. But as an adult, I don't walk around sharing my health issues. I know as a blogger and a speaker and an author, you're in a slightly different situation. But what's your advice to adults with type 1 who may want to use these cards?
Well, I want to make sure we highlight the fact that the cards are not only from the perspective of a person with diabetes. So you're not only stepping into the role of a person with diabetes, a broader perspective that's offered. We have kind of viewpoints to consider in there, to be a practitioner, a healthcare provider in this space, what it's like to have an office full of people who may or may not be taking your advice on how you manage those emotions, what it's like to be a child with diabetes. You're sitting at a sleepover for the first time and you start to feel fuzzy in the head. Do you tell the other kids? Do you ask for an adult's help? So we're not just taking it from the adult with diabetes perspective. And that's really important, because I only know one vantage point when it comes to diabetes. I've only been the host of it. But now that I have 2 kids and a husband and parents and friends and that sort of thing, my diabetes isn't just mine. It touches them too. And it's really good for me to have empathy of what it's like, or empathy for what it might be like to be married to someone with diabetes. What's it like to listen to someone's Dexcom alarm go off and to feel very nervous about that, but not want to be overbearing in your response to it? What's it like to balance being a little kid and understand that your mom has what everyone's calling a disease, but diseases are supposed to look ugly and scary, and your mom seems fine. So how do you reconcile that in your head? Things like that. It helps me better manage my diabetes when I take into account all the people who are helping me manage it, how they might be feeling. So
I think that makes a lot of sense. And it is, and I hope I've mentioned that it is all sorts of different perspectives in here. Grandparents, kids, healthcare providers, as you said. Justin, how can people get the cards?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways to do it. Probably the easiest way to do it is to go to walkamilecards.com, and you'll see the T1D edition is right there on the home page. This was the one that, was sort of the work that we all did together to start it all. Since then, we've had some requests for a couple of other diseases and disease states. So we've done kidney transplant and cystic fibrosis as well, and we're working on depression and anxiety and addiction now. But the type 1 diabetes one was the one that kind of started it all, and obviously because of my story where my heart is. So that's where we are. When you first show up on the page, that'll be the first thing that you see.
Excellent. And we will link that up, of course, at diabetes-connections.com. Before I let you go, let me do a quick round robin and just see how everybody's really doing. Justin, how's your daughter? How's life? How's everything going?
She is doing great. Thank you for asking. We're sneaking up now on her 7th birthday, and she is looking at a pump for the first time, which we're very excited about. And with the news coming out about some of the closed loop systems, I think we are more hopeful than ever.
That's great. Well, I hope she has a great birthday. That's fun.
Thank you.
7 is so fun.
It is so fun. We're doing a trampoline park, so I think we're going to be burning off a bunch of calories that day. Yeah.
Bennett, how about you? You've got 4 kids, as I mentioned. You have 2 with type 1. How's everybody doing?
They're all doing great. It's kind of fun to have young adult kids and see them thrive. I'm ridiculously proud of all of them, and they give me reason to be so. And over the summer, I gave myself a present to kind of pick my spirits up. I bought a new bicycle, and since the end of July, I think I put 700 miles on the thing. So that's personally very exciting.
And I have to mention the pants. Bennet wore these leggings. You guys are huge Disney fans, and I don't know where you found these gorgeous
Kerri
leggings.
Nightmare. She was sitting right next
Oh
to
my gosh, they're like, is it the Magic Kingdom map? It's some kind of map of Disney World in like super tight leggings that you wore as part of a fundraiser, right? Do you still have them?
I refuse to testify on grounds that somebody might make me wear them again. So what we've done is, and this is a great thing to talk about as we enter the fall, Sparrow Rose is going to be coming up again for Valentine's Day. There's always a need to help people in parts of the world where just a vial of insulin is a tremendous gift of life. And I know that the pharma industry and the device industry are all very generous with in-kind supplies. We need to be equally generous with a few bucks to help make the distribution of supplies happen for kids in the third world that need insulin. So Sparrow Rose is going to be an opportunity to once again give. And what I did is I said, well, if we get enough people that give on an ongoing basis, I will wear these stupid looking shorts that somebody found online and posted on Facebook as a joke. And my wife instantly bought a pair of. It's just a way of kind of, making fun out of what is really a tough situation. But if you can't have fun doing good, why not? What's the point?
It's nice to know when you really have married the right person. And Bennet, we will, of course, be doing a lot more with Sparrow Rose. Diabetes Podcast Week helps out with that as well. So much more to come.
Thank you so much for jumping in and filling that need for Sparrow Rose. We have high hopes always for Sparrow Rose.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And Kerri,
I'm sorry, I'm thinking about Bennett's pants again. I'm having a hard time.
Somebody get her a barf bag.
Of course, congratulations on your baby boy. How is he doing? How's your daughter doing? How's the family adjusting?
Well, I've had our podcast on mute for when I wasn't speaking because he's sitting right behind me and he's snoring really loudly. I wanted to make sure he was kind of quiet, but It's been an adjustment, a really nice adjustment, and we love him so much. We would love if he started to sleep at night, but he sleeps really nicely during the day, so we'll take what we can get. But he's just so lovely, and I'm in that weird new mom euphoria, which helps the lack of sleep.
That's great. And I will link up. You've always been very open, of course, with sharing your experiences. If you're not familiar with Kerri, or even if you are, of course, we'll link up a lot of, I don't want to call it information, but really your story over the last year with the birth of your son and so much that happened with that. So good. And I'll put it on diabetes-connections.com. But I know a lot of my listeners would be very upset if I didn't at least ask, because we can do a baby show another time. But
while we're asking about Kerri's family, can I ask, what's the next movie that Chris is going to make that's going to scare the crap out of me?
Oh, dude. So the thing is, he has in his office upstairs, he has one of the walls of his office painted with dry erase board paint. So one of the office walls you can completely write on. And he writes all his story ideas out on this wall. And some of them are really unsavory and uncomfortable. And when the neighborhood kids come over, they all go and stand at his office door and look through the glass and get all bugged out on what he's got written on his wall. So we're here to damage all the neighborhood kids, basically. So the specifics of what he's working on, I couldn't tell you, but if you ask the kids down the street, they could probably give you a rundown on what keeps them up at night and makes them scared.
That's so funny. And I should explain, Kerri's husband is a Hollywood screenwriter. And writes and director does not write children's movies.
Yeah, but he changes diapers like a champ. So what he does for work pales in comparison to what he does as a father.
Oh, you should get that embroidered like on a pillow.
Right? I'm sleep deprived. This whole thing could be a lie. Who knows?
Justin, are you still with us?
I am. Now, actually, I am so terrified of scary movies, but maybe it's time for me to dig in.
No, I can't.
I am too. I support from a distance.
Yeah. No way. So, one thing that I think is important to mention is just to figure out how do you use these? I mean, Bennet said that he kind of stacks the deck and takes it with him. But if you want to either maybe play with them or present with them, Justin, any suggestions for how to do that?
Yeah, I can hit a couple that are a little bit close to home. One is if you are a parent of a person with diabetes or you're a person with diabetes yourself and you want to connect with your school, with your administrators, or with your own relatives, what I like to do is I like to fan them out and play sort of pick a card. And I wait for folks to grab one that is specifically related to either being a person with diabetes, being a child with diabetes, or being a parent. And the trick is to stay on the activity. So it's easy for people to say, oh yeah, I can imagine what that's like. But a lot of the cards are actually specific things to do. And so I say, look, let's go do the thing. And most importantly, you do the thing and then you talk about it. The activities take 5 minutes or less. And what really matters is the reflection. So also, we'll do the little activities together in 5 minutes or less and say, okay, what did that feel like? And that's what really drives home that empathy. So with parents and teachers and with friends, the one that really surprised me is how much I've learned about my own daughter's experience. So if you're a parent of a person with diabetes, the reality is you have a lot of rich experience, but you don't have the experience of being a person with diabetes. So go through the cards and do those. And I've learned a ton that way.
Kerri, how have you used them?
I've used them in a professional capacity as often as I can because I think they're really excellent conversation generators. For example, I've used them at the JDRF Type 1 Nation meetings. We do some breakout sessions, and to have people who have a kind of a varied experience with diabetes in the audience pull a random card like Justin had said and walk through that experience or walk through that activity, it gets really good conversation going and gets a lot of people, teenagers in the room who think, oh, my parents couldn't possibly understand. And why do they keep saying we have diabetes? They don't have diabetes. Then we play through the cards, right? And then they get a real feel for what their parents are doing on a day-to-day basis to take care of them. And it opens up great conversations between those two potentially tense groups. So I've used them in that capacity. And also about 2 weeks ago, maybe a week ago, I'm losing track of time, I did a presentation by Skype to the CARE unit, the Knowledge and Evaluation Research Unit over at the Mayo Clinic, and to some of their healthcare professionals. And we use these cards, and they aren't a diabetes-specific group per se, but we use these cards to talk about the importance of empathy provided by a healthcare professional. So what it's like to be a patient walking in there and what it's like to have an empathic sort of provider and how that can really improve the patient-clinician experience. And that I thought was really interesting because it stepped way outside of what I thought the original intent of the cards was going to be. And now we have healthcare professionals saying empathy is just as important as the medication that we're dispensing. And that is just, it's awesome to hear people really coming together around this idea.
That's great. I wonder too, and Bennet, I'm going to ask you in just a second. I think that my son is now in middle school and pretty much wants nothing to do with us anymore. I wonder if giving him this deck and saying, use it as you want, rather than me saying, let's sit down together. Because, I mean, Justin, when Benny was 7, I could have had a party and given his cards out. But now, Bennet, let me ask you, because I know you have older kids, so I know I'm going to get through this time, because your kids are nice again, right?
Yeah, hang on a second. My Roomba just started, and it's going to make a hellacious amount of noise. Let me go turn it off. I will be right back. I think I really love the idea that you suggested, Stacey, of giving them to teens and young adults and just let them play. That's the purpose and the magic of these cards for me has been their ability to go way beyond anything any of us in our wildest dreams had expected. And I guess my little nugget of that is I was returning on a flight from Lord knows where, and I'm in Philadelphia airport, and I got a text, I think from Justin or Kerri, and a group in Philadelphia had seen the online version of the first thing, the empathy cards, and made an HIV version it was very focused on the community that it served, which was inner city young men that hadn't come out to their family or hadn't come out to their community and were diagnosed with HIV. And I read these things in tears. I was so honored to have been part of a process that inspired that response and that positive response of turning around and making something positive out of something difficult. I was thrilled. So yes, just get them in people's hands and wait for magic to happen.
Well, I think we'll leave it there. That was fantastic. Thank you so much for taking some time and talking about this. It's always great to talk to you. And Justin, it's great to meet you. Kerri, Justin, and Bennet, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Stacey.
Thanks for having us.
You can find out more about the Walk a Mile project at diabetes-connections.com. Always fun to talk to Bennet and Kerri, always difficult to stay on topic. So I hope that it all made sense. And if we talked about something that, you didn't get the reference or something went by quickly, please let me know. I hate when that happens as a listener. So drop me a line either on social media or Stacey at diabetes-connections.com. And I hope you had fun. This was a fun show today. Lots of great stuff going on all this month with Diabetes Awareness Month. And yeah, I'm hearing a lot about burnout too. If you're feeling that it's not really a time for you to spread awareness or get on your soapbox, that's okay. Just living with type 1 or any type of diabetes is not easy. And we are well aware of it every single day. You're doing your part. If you're moved to do more, wonderful. If you're moved to do more another time, wonderful. I don't think anybody should feel guilty about not standing up and waving the flag every single day. It can be exhausting. So just be kind to yourself. All right, again, having said that, I'll put a link on diabetes-connections.com to all the stuff I am doing this month. But, I think as a parent of a kid with type 1, it's a little different. But that's just me. Follow on social media, please. Diabetes Connections is on Twitter and Facebook. I'm on Instagram as Stacey Sims because one account is plenty. You can also please subscribe to the podcast on any podcast app and leave a review if you are so moved. That's always nice to see. I am thrilled that you're here. I hope Diabetes Awareness Month is doing okay by you. And I will see you back here next week.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.